are off. Hello, my name is Brad Bodnar-Chuck, and welcome to the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast, where we discuss everything hospitality, from the food on the plate to the teams that make it happen and the community that drives this industry forward. On this podcast, we sit down and chat with some of the most exciting, inspiring, and innovative minds that make up one of the most dynamic industries that there is today. And today, I have the pleasure of being joined by none other than Melissa Fiorucci and Paula Mohammed. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are, I say this not all that often, but now I will repeat it. If you are listening on iTunes or on Podbean or Stitcher or Spotify, I encourage you to go over to YouTube and check out the podcast there, because I've been invited into Paula's lovely home and we're literally in her kitchen. So thank you so much for opening up your home to myself and the listeners in the podcast today.
It's great. Didn't know there'd be quite so many.
Yeah. So let's just get right into it. Paula and I met at a charity dinner, I guess about a month ago now. And admittedly, I didn't know what we are going to discuss was a thing until after I had seen you at the dinner. And then I don't even know how I came to learn about it after that. Maybe you had posted some stuff.
I may have posted something from it.
Yeah. So I came to learn about In My Kitchen, and I was super intrigued by it existing, not only existing period, but existing in this city as well. And always so surprised by there's so many different things going on in our communities that really uses food as a connector, but only a certain segment of the population knows about it. So I'm super intrigued to selfishly learn more about it myself, but also help kind of spread the word.
Great.
So can we help myself and listeners understand better what is In My Kitchen? Why does it exist? How did it start? And how did you two come together to help create what this is?
Sure. So In My Kitchen, we launched just over a year ago, about a year and a bit ago, and it derived from my upbringing. So I was fortunate to grow up in a very multicultural household. My dad was from Pakistan and my mom from New Zealand with a Maori background. And I grew up in Canada, and then we moved to New Zealand for about 5 years when I was about 9 to 13. So during that time, it was these memories of the feelings I had in our kitchen with, one of my very first food memories, I guess, is I did not like peas. And I just remember that so clearly. But Bibi, who is my dad's father, she would be we called her Bibi, but grandmother. I remember going to her apartment, and it was actually, I think it was in Dunbar somewhere. So this would have been 74 probably. I'm going to now tell you my age. I was 4 and sitting on a stool. And I remember she had her saris on, and I could hear her bracelets, like all the beautiful gold jingling, and the smell of curry. And she was making curried peas for me for lunch.
Oh.
And I just fell in love with them. And I just have this memory of just her and I sharing this bowl of curried peas. And then she passed away a few years later. And so unfortunately, I didn't get more of those memories with her like that. But that, I think, started this, love of culture and food. And in our household, it was just my dad loved to cook and my mom loved to cook. And my dad's business was with the Japanese. So he was going to Japan for twice a year since, before I was born. So often they would have Japanese customers in town. And instead of going out for dinners to entertain, he would bring them all back. So I remember, Mr. Kinmatsu and all these different Japanese. And my brother and I would sit at the table when we were little kids. And everybody would cook together. And they would show my parents how to cook. We would have, jumping ahead now, when we were living in New Zealand, they would come to New Zealand and we'd go fishing and we'd make sashimi. Now, we wouldn't do that in my kitchen culinary experience without freezing it first or anything.
Right.
But, just these awesome memories of these different cultures. And in New Zealand, we had very, very close Italian friends. And just being in their home full of their dishes from Italy. And they were both very musical and artists. And just this thick culture in this little town in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand, where in the 80s now, we're about early 80s, and we'd have these fabulous meals. And again, it was everybody around the table, and you'd linger around the table and you would share these meals. And I now we label it making space for connections and connecting, right? But back then it's just, this is, it just feels good. You feel like you belong. And then my aunties and my grandma, so my mom's side of the family, every big family dinner, there'd be, with all the cousins, and you can relate to this, Melissa, like all the family. And then all the aunts and my grandma and my mom, they'd all be, and my great aunts, they'd be in the kitchen doing the dishes after. And it wasn't because that's where they were meant to be. It's because that's where all the talking happened.
The conversation.
Yeah.
And usually the men found their way in there anyways, right? Because that's where all the fun was.
Where all the action was. And they'd pour the sherry, and grandma would bring out her shortbread, and cousins would be running around and, picking at this and that, and just loved it. So now fast forwarding to where I am now, I did sports marketing and event management for 20 odd years, which I was very passionate about and loved it. Had two amazing boys, which they're now turning 12 and 13. And of course, they grew up with a love of cooking. My brother loves to cook, my sister-in-law, my mom, my dad. So again, all of this just carried on for years. And I wanted a change in career. I got to a point where I'd been doing this events for 24 years. And I was like looking ahead, what can I do for the next 20 years that I'm passionate about and love, and also to provide me the flexibility to be more with my kids, when they're around, because I was quickly realizing this time was going fast. And I started thinking back, and food has always been something I've been passionate about. I always wanted to be a cooking show host or something like that. But I never felt I was someone who wanted to be the one, the chef. That wasn't where I was at. And I started looking back over my life and those memories. I thought, well, how can I recreate this and make that something? And then eventually In My Kitchen was born, and did the business plan. I'm very much a planner. Quickly realized within a short period of time, the business plan it's pivoting.
Totally. Yeah,
it's a total meandering. Yeah. And the first thing was I had great advice. And, now, when I launched In My Kitchen, I was in my mid to late 40s. And by that time, you've got this wonderful network of people around you who are experts in their field. And I had lots of great advice. And a very good friend said to me, don't invest in good photography right away. And I invested in a brand and in My Kitchen, and spent a lot of time on creating. And I had wonderful people to work with. Helen McMurdo was our photographer, and Maggie Chalk was a graphic designer I found her, through somebody else. And she was actually living in Amsterdam, but she was great because I'd say to her, this is kind of what I want. And she'd say, no, Paula, this just what you're telling me. And we developed the personality. So she was a huge part in helping me articulate the brand. So once that brand and website and was ready to go, then what I was really passionate about was starting to happen, which was finding the people and the hosts that I wanted to work with who were passionate and knowledgeable home cooks. So this is the essence of In My Kitchen. In My Kitchen provides these experiences around the table and in the kitchen that I grew up with passionate and knowledgeable home cooks from different cultures who are willing to share their family recipes and their stories and cook with you in their kitchen and show you what their nonas taught you or what their mother taught them. And then everybody sits down and shares the meal together. So it's not just a cooking class, and it's not just a dinner. It's trying to peel back the curtain or pull back the curtain into somebody's kitchen and welcoming them in. And we purposely did hosts and not chefs, because you're being hosted by Melissa or Naomi in their home. And so that was what In My Kitchen in my mind was. And that's pretty much what we've been able to articulate. But what I quickly realized was In My Kitchen was evolving based on the hosts that came on board. And that was awesome, because it's been a journey where, like, Naomi, our Japanese host, is a young ex-pro soccer player and a very innovative cook. There's nothing really that pulls from her traditional Japanese roots in terms of food. It's what she wants to do is express ways to eat Japanese food in a healthy way, and showing people how you can take these flavors and what to combine them with, and then how to take that to the next level. So it's been a really fun experience. And how Melissa and I met. I'm trying to remember now.
I answered your ad. Someone had posted it on my Facebook and said, Melissa, you should do this. You know, and I hadn't heard of you guys, of In My Kitchen. And then I basically came out, I emailed you and said, yeah, I want to do this. This is amazing. And you came over, and remember I had all you guys over. I was like, okay, I'm going to make pasta. We're going to make pasta in like 2 hours. Why not do this? And you and your friends came over to try it out.
Yeah.
And we had a blast.
So what we do, we don't just show up on people's doorsteps.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like we forged a relationship first.
So one thing I was really wanted to be careful of is I wanted to make sure that the hosts that we worked with were also represented the values of In My Kitchen. And so we usually have a phone call or we meet for coffee, and then we do, like, I do it in quotes, a tryout, where the idea is we test the menu, but it's also a chance for the host to go, you know, oh my gosh, is this really what I want to dive into?
Yeah.
And for us to just feel like, what would that be like? Is this going to work? Does this feel right? Is this something that the host really wants to do? And so our selection committee, I call it sometimes with tongue in cheek.
Your board of directors?
Yeah, my board of directors is made up of my muse for In My Kitchen, which is my mom.
Okay.
She is awesome, and she often comes with us. But people who have been involved with In My Kitchen from the very beginning and who understand the brand and the values and what we're trying to share. So usually we have 3 or 4 of us come, and usually it's a lot of fun. And I remember at Melissa's, it was in the summer, and we made pasta and ragu.
And I was a little bit apprehensive. I had wanted to do this for a while, right? I had moved back from Italy and thought, how can I do something like this while also having like a full-time job? But I love cooking. I love having people over. I love sharing my experiences. But I was paranoid because I live in an apartment.
Right.
And I was thinking, is anyone going to come to an apartment? And then it was awesome because you're still able to have these really exciting, fulfilling experiences in a small space, right?
Yeah.
I think we didn't have any challenges. You just make do, right?
And that's one of the things is, so we limit our experiences. I call them the signature experiences because now we've got other ones that happen, but it's only 6 people.
Okay.
So it's really nice. So you get 6 people together with the host, and that allows for, people don't have to have a big kitchen or big space to do this.
To seat 12 people.
To seat 12 people.
Right.
But sometimes the physical makeup of the kitchen may not work and then we try and find other ways we've used my kitchen a few times, other ways to make it work. And then once we do the tryout, then generally we do, I call it sort of get to know the In My Kitchen program, but about 20 hours of paid training where the hosts also do their level 1 food safety certification.
Yeah.
So there was no requirement to have that done, but we really wanted to make sure that we could say to guests, yes, we have these, you can expect, I'm putting my hands up high, a level of expectation this high. So that was something that would be across the board. And then we just go through a little bit about how we would set up the In My Kitchen experience. So there's a bit of a template of how it rolls out. And then after a while, when hosts get comfortable, they make it their own, I think, for the most part.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of adapt, right? And after you have a few of them, you kind of figure out the flow, how it works. And I think, I'm just trying to think whatever changes I made. Like you just have to think what's going to work best and what gets everyone talking, which is what I love about it, is because oftentimes people don't know each other and they're coming to your house. They don't know each other. They don't know you. And then they leave friends, which is a pretty cool experience. And they're having this sort of bonding over making pollo in porchetta or whatever. So just sort of teaching them, but also being able to facilitate that. So it's hands-on, but also there's that, you have to make sure there's that kind of connection time, right? And the eating around the table, which is the best. Everyone loves that.
We haven't really talked about food yet, but I'm actually salivating just listening to you guys talk about the experience.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting for me, and I feel like I want more and more people to hear conversations like this, and I want more and more people to attend dinners and events like what you guys are facilitating, because like you said, Melissa, people come strangers but leave friends, and I don't know anything else that is a connector like that. Like food for me is the only thing that comes to mind. There's nothing else I think that we all need and touch ideally every single day, that can really, it breaks down those silos. It doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or a bus driver or it doesn't matter. Sitting around a table and breaking bread, it really is, it is that one thing that really unifies us. So for you, Melissa, can you kind of describe what it looked like at the beginning when you first started within my kitchen? Obviously you were operating within those, for lack of a better term, like boundaries that were defined by In My Kitchen. And then once you got more comfortable with it, you could kind of put your own spin on it. So what are some things that you feel more comfortable doing at your events that you feel are unique to what In My Kitchen offers when people come to your specific dining experience?
Well, you know, like it's just things being able to adapt. Like what I love, or just showing people kind of how it would be in like a typical Italian home, or maybe, I don't know how typical my family is. Like we eat, like we're a little bit crazy, and then we eat and talk about food a lot, but like, and we spend a lot of our time cooking, but how it would be, and like, or just kind of drawing of my experiences when I lived in Milan, and like the aperitivo culture, right? Like that I love, where you go out and you have like little nibbles with the drink.
Almost like a tapas for
style,
Italy.
Right?
Yeah.
So people can come and they're still going to get like nonna food, because that's what I cook. I cook food like my grandmother made, right? But they're also going to get sort of, I figured, well, why not add a little bit of this Milanese influence in there, even though it's Umbrian style that I'm cooking. So like they come and they'll have a drink. I have like an Italian aperitivo, which is like non-alcoholic, right? Which people have never had before. It's this bitter.
Okay.
And I sort of started doing that afterwards, because after a few times I was like, I need a little bit of an icebreaker or whatever. Right. So I did this, and you know, everyone's like, oh, trying this crazy thing. Some people like it, some people don't. And then having little nibbles. And then that gets everyone chatting, because when everyone comes in, they're always a little bit awkward, right?
Yeah.
Like apprehensive. I'm in this lady's house. Like, who is she? And then I'm not kind of shy. Like, I love having people over, right? So I'm like, you come in, there's this boisterous Italian lady, and she's giving me drinks and food and telling me to eat, right?
You look skinny.
You look skinny. What are you doing? Like, you know, so anyways, so it was sort of that. So I kind of adapted that. I said, you know, we need a little bit of an icebreaker. So the aperitivo does that. And then just realizing what I do try to do is I found we're working, like I have a pretty tight schedule. I keep everyone on a schedule, right? Like I am not messing around.
This is like a militant
Italian home. But like fun, militant, but also fun, but also because I want to eat too. Like I'm hungry. Exactly. I've been prepping so long, right? But what I realized though is that what people really loved, like they love the cooking and getting their hands dirty and making the pasta, but they loved the hour or so that we could sit around the table. Like that is like a non-negotiable thing. And what I love about In My Kitchen, because then everyone sits, I'll say, I'll set the table, but then everyone's grabbing dishes to set the table, and we sit there and talk. And that is probably, I think, the most amazing part of it is just having people sit down, and then they say to me, do you guys do this like every week? And I'm like, yeah, with my family, we sit down every Sunday, and we have this big dinner, and we sit, and people aren't doing that as much anymore. And I think that's why people love coming to In My Kitchen, because they have that experience of sitting around the table.
So sorry, go ahead, Paula.
No, I was just going to say that was something that surprised me too, is people don't sit around the table as much for meals. And we've always been a family where, yes, we like to go out to restaurants where people would say, oh, you refer to me as a foodie. I'm like, I'm not actually a foodie. Like I love to cook, and I love to try other people's cooking, but I wouldn't be able to tell you which are the hot spots right now in Vancouver. Like that's not me.
Either. Yeah,
that's not me. But we've always sat around the table with friends versus going out to restaurants with friends, and it's because of the way that you can just, I don't know, share and I hate labeling things like the connecting, but I guess that is what it is, and that was a big part of for me. Where we were politically when we launched In My Kitchen was also the presidential election in the U.S. and Trump's foray into that. And it kind of got me thinking that, I've never been one to think very much about my father's from Pakistan, my mom's from New Zealand. People, during that time when that election was happening and Trump was coming in, people started asking me, have you ever faced racism? And that was probably the first time anyone's ever asked me that, because I think most people look at me and they think I'm Greek or Portuguese. They have no idea where I'm from. And anyway, it just made me realize that, a big thing about In My Kitchen is I wanted people to experience other cultures. And when you break bread with somebody, like you said, and you sit and chat with them, you realize like it's okay to ask Suha, when do you wear your hijab? When do you take it? It's okay to ask these questions. We don't.
Otherwise, how do we learn?
How do we learn? Sorry, how do we learn? And so that was really important with me within My Kitchen, is that people came and could sit with Melissa or Naomi or Suha and be with their families and learn and hopefully break down some of the stereotypes, but the hesitancy to get to know one another.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Something you touched on there, and I'd love to unpack a bit, is I think Siri just turned on. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Siri just turned on. Technology's a beautiful thing.
To be honest, I've been sitting here thinking if I turned off my phone, I'm panicking. But
no, it's okay. It happens. Just around things like that, about it being, we're living in a time right now. It's 2019, soon to be 2020, and it is seemingly very faux pas to ask certain questions, because if you're asking those questions, it's either disrespectful or you should know. And we can talk about a slew of things, from race relations to equality, food racism, all of these things that come up. And as a white male who is very privileged, and I understand that daily, how privileged I am to be born in Canada and be a white male, but I really want to learn. And I feel a lot of times the table is the only place that I can ask questions and not have the person that I'm asking the question to feel threatened or get their back up. But it really, there is, like you were saying, there is no other opportunity for us to learn if we can't ask the questions. So I think food again facilitates those conversations, and maybe it just kind of like relaxes people a bit and gets them open. And after you've maybe cooked in Melissa's home, you understand that guy next to you or that girl next to you really means no harm, and they're just trying to learn as well. Like, help me understand about where you're from and what makes you tick and why you choose to have that tattoo or why you choose to dress the way you do. And I think food again, it's such a connector. But I would love to get both of your opinions on why you think that is. Why is it food? I mean, you could argue it is sport as well, but sport isn't necessarily accessible for everyone. There are other things like music and art. You can argue food is an art, it very much is. But why do you both feel individually food has that power? And obviously you've witnessed it in your own homes and other people's homes. What is it about a warm dish or a cold dish or a drink that just has that ability to let people have their guard down and be more open and have conversation?
Well, I'm thinking food is pleasure, right? So that's just sort of, I love just eating and the act of eating and cooking. And so if you're doing something that's pleasurable, and it's not obviously pleasurable for everybody, but it's joyous, right? So it's kind of hard to have your guard up and boundaries when you're sitting there doing something joyous,
right?
And then I don't know, for me, I've just found so many similarities, right? So you're making one thing And then someone from some totally other part of the world is like, oh, well, we do the same thing. And then you're like, okay, yeah, we're not all that different after all, right? So you're already engaging in something which is wonderful. And then, you're finding out that you have these similarities.
Yeah, commonality.
A commonality, right? Like, and that breaks down sort of boundaries. I mean, I'm looking right now at your mezzaluna there. You know, I have one, right? Like, we talk about, you just talk about the sort of, and it sounds so basic. But it isn't.
But I think everything is so basic.
Yeah,
like we build stuff up so much, but like, come on, like it's simple. Like
simple's best.
Yeah, like a warm bowl of pasta with some tomato sauce. Like
how can you be mad? That sounds great. That sounds wonderful, or whatever it is that you want to eat. Like it's just it's pleasure.
What is it for you, Paula, that you can attribute to food being so powerful and bringing people together?
I think food and the making of food and the sharing of food, I truly think it's an expression of love. And I think it's a way people share and show their love for others and their graciousness to come and share this with me and come into my home often I have friends over who don't cook, have no desire to cook, are not interested in cooking, so they'd look at my mezzaluna and go, what happened to your knife?
Exactly. What is that?
But what they love and what feels great for me is for me to be able to watch them enjoy and then questions, how did you do that? And I'm not going to name names because she'll probably listen to this podcast, but a very good friend now will text me, okay, I've got the salmon, how long do I put it in the oven? And she's cooking up a storm, making these great dishes and sharing it with her family. And all of our In My Kitchen menus are designed, well, they're not really designed, they're come from our hosts, but they're all simple. It's just getting comfortable with the ingredients. And the idea is that people can then take those and cook them for their families, and we do youth experiences now. And Melissa did a great pasta making. And what else did we have? Crostata, your known as crostata. But one of the young girls went home and that Monday after school came home, made homemade pasta because she was hungry. And that's what I love. It wasn't I'm going to make homemade pasta, take photos and post it on Instagram. This is how we grew up. Your family cooked. You made, I did not make homemade pasta, but you did things. And you sat around a table with people from different cultures. And as a child, it wasn't pointed out to you, okay, now this person's from this country, this person's from this country. We accept everybody. No. You just ate together. You cooked together. There was no labels. There was no, I don't know how to explain it. Like there was no branding of...
You didn't have to put a label on anything. It was just easy. It just was.
It just was. And I always think any question, you can ask me anything if you're sincere about the intention behind it is coming from a good place. And that's what I tell my kids.
100%.
Don't ask questions, but don't be afraid as long as your intention is good.
Good. Yeah, absolutely.
And I always say if you cook angry, tastes bad.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know. I don't know. I've cooked angry and that's just...
There's some fiery Italian recipes.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that because sometimes, when you're kneading that dough, like you need better. You need a little bit of anger.
That's something we were saying before we turned the mics on, which is I find so interesting about food. And again, that's a whole other world that we can dive into is we were talking about if we had Melissa was sharing a story about a recipe from her Nona that she's trying to recreate and having challenges with, and I was saying maybe it's just the fact that your Nona made it and it was your Nona. And I'm a big believer in we all have energy, there's energy being passed between us all right now. We're all connected to everything, in my opinion. And I was saying if the three of us right now said 3, 2, 1, go, we all looked at the exact same recipe and cooked it, it would look different, it would taste different, and we follow every single step the same, but there's just something unique about each of us touching it. And I think that's so cool as well about food. It must be cool for you to see when you host people in your home, and you as well when they're engaging with the menu that you've created, and maybe it doesn't look how you would do it, but that's how they've interpreted it, and that's how they've executed it. I think there again is just some beauty in it. Just because you roll your dough a certain way doesn't mean I do or Paula does, but doesn't make it better or worse. I think that's something cool about food.
And that's for sure. Like, I'm gonna be honest, it's a bit of a challenge because I come
yes,
from like my nonna was like
with a wooden spoon.
Yeah, for sure. That wooden spoon featured predominantly, right? Like, so I have to be like, no, Melissa, like you can't say you're doing it wrong, right? Like you just have to let people. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, you know, honestly, you see on Instagram, like these pasta doughs and I'm like it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
But then I'm like, you know, I don't know, like we just had it and it didn't look like Instagram worthy, but it tasted damn good,
exactly.
You know, like, so. And it was beautiful, right? So it's just, having to rein that in, and not everyone's has to be the same, and everyone's method is different.
And I think it's one cool thing about social media right now is because everyone is sharing so much, which I think, again, pros and cons, but a pro being there are so many different, and we'll just stick with the Italian theme because we're kind of on it, but there's so many different types of like a lasagna, for example, and they're going to look different from a rustic one to a very modern one.
Yeah.
And for me, if I'm someone who's not that skilled or not well versed or not comfortable in the kitchen, it's nice that I can see like, oh, it doesn't have to always look amazing under lights on a white plate cut perfectly. It can be a little sloppy. It can be a little wet. It can be those things.
Yes.
And that
just like people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Great analogy.
It's
just like
more.
people.
It feels more real, or you feel more welcomed and comfortable if somebody's showing vulnerability or they're not perfect. And
And even those perfect photos that we see on there, that wasn't always that way.
No.
Like there were a ton of missteps, an absolute ton. Like for example, your Nona, before she perfected her recipes, got it wrong and got it wrong and got it wrong.
Oh, she would never
sorry.
agree to that. You know what I mean?
Sorry,
yeah, like, but yes, of course,
in
right?
Theory.
Yeah, and I mean, she was cooking from like the time that was her job in the farmhouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big point of contention between the sisters, right? They were all mad because they had to go out to the fields, but my Nonna got to stay in and cook.
Oh.
So they made her like a little step stool, and she'd have to make like the pasta for, and that there was no stores, so they couldn't get like store-bought pasta, like dried pasta. So she'd have to make the pasta for everything. And so when I'm kicking myself for like, oh, this isn't perfect or whatever, I realized like Nonna had like 87 years
of training.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, give yourself a little bit of slack.
Yeah, exactly.
Have some empathy for yourself. I think that's a great point.
Yeah. One of our hosts, Emily, she has a great quote, if I can get this right, but she says, look at, people should have fun with food. It's like a palette of colors, and they should be mixed and experiment and have fun with them. That's her, where she comes at it. Now she writes cookbooks and whatnot, so that's definitely a talent of hers. She can mix them and it turns out quite nicely.
Yeah.
But I love that idea. It's kind of pulls back the rules around recipes and food, but just try things out. And I find kids are the best at that. They don't think twice, right? They just go in there and start trying different things.
Yeah, and I think maybe you haven't thought this consciously, maybe subconsciously it's kind of peaked in your mind as you've been hosting these events. Maybe you've seen these adults or young adults or older population kind of reconnect with that child within them. And I think we're all like, I'm very much, there's a photo I have at home of myself. I might be 3 or 4 years old playing a tennis racket as a guitar. And like, I still feel like that very much still is me. I just look different. My voice is a little deeper and I have a beard, but like, we're all still that person. So it's nice to have opportunities like the ones that In My Kitchen provides people to come and like reconnect with that a bit and play and experiment, because for so many of us, our days don't allow for that because we feel like we have responsibilities and society, we want to see us show up in certain ways and we want to look a certain way. And that's something that I'm learning right now. It's not trying to become like the best version of you. It's actually you unbecoming who you're not, which I think is such an interesting thing. I think food, again, can do that for us, especially food with other people. And then cooking as well is just such a powerful thing. Can we quickly change speeds and talk about visceral reactions? And I ask this to almost all of my guests, because most of my guests are creators in some way, shape, or form, whether they're architects or designers or head chefs or bartenders. They're creating something. And when they create that product, I'm always intrigued to understand what is their visceral reaction when they see their customers or guests or clients engage with that product or service. So for you both, when you have someone like Melissa into your home, or a group of people into your home, and you step back a bit and you see them at the table and everyone's sharing and eating, and you hear the sounds of, you know, what you want to hear around a table, what are you feeling viscerally, like in the marrow of your bones when that happens? Can you describe it?
Well, I think it's just pretty amazing. Like, I can't believe, well, one, I'm always shocked that we were able to cook it all, right? Like, I'm like, oh,
we did it.
like, we did it. This is awesome. And then when it's just like when people eat your food and they love it, or their food, in this case, they're cooking it, right? And they love it. And they're like, this is the best, or this is amazing, or I've never had anything like this before. Like, it's so warming, right? Like, it's just, you're like, okay, I'm doing this right. Like, I'm doing something right, you know? And then when they say, you know, I'm going to make this tomorrow or whatever. And then what I love is just when people, I guess this is Italian in me, when people eat everything, right? And like, we make a lot of food, and like, I've had people like teenagers. I love having teenagers, because man, teenagers can eat. And like, they just eat everything, and it just makes you feel amazing. Like, your visceral, you're just like, wow, we're doing something right.
And Paula, for you, I'm going to change the question just a little bit. As the linchpin in my kitchen, as someone who, like, you thought this is kind of your third child, if I can.
For sure.
So what is your visceral reaction like now, watching someone like Melissa take it and run with it and see her succeed, and watch her host people and have them be so impressed and engaged with what she's doing? For you, what's the visceral reaction of watching your once just idea turn into a reality?
I think for me, the success of In My Kitchen is how happy Melissa and Naomi and Celine and Sue, all the hosts are. And up until recently, I've just been trying. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, got to keep going. And now recently I'm able to stop and go, you know, look at a business card, or look at our website, or see, you know, we're trying new things. And like, you know, now we're there. We've kind of got the foundation down, and now we can do some fun stuff after that. So when I see people, we do surveys after each experience, and the comments that I get back from people, I just feel like I never thought, I always hoped, but never thought I'd be able to put something out in the world for people that will create a lasting memory, a family memory or experience. And the way I grew up with, I always feel so lucky that I have those memories. So to be able to see other people collecting those memories with our In My Kitchen host is it just feels like I've been able to, like, when you give somebody a gift that was unexpected and that you made by hand, which I don't do very often. So it feels like that. And so the comments that come back, we had a mom from Florida, and she planned a surprise dinner or In My Kitchen experience for her daughter's, I think it was a 30th birthday. And she had her ex-husband come, so obviously the daughter's father, the boyfriend, his parents, and it was 8 people. And I said, and they really wanted to do Melissa's Umbrian experience. And I said, there was only room for 6, but I contacted Melissa, and she's like, well, I'll get a couple of more boards. We'll make it work.
Exactly. We'll make
it work. Yeah. And they said that was one of the most memorable experiences they've ever had in their life, and they were so grateful and so thankful.
They were awesome.
Yeah,
it was chaotic. Well, I don't even know if it was chaotic. It was like, a lot of people, but it was again, I'm gonna say that word again, joyous. But like, it was just, they were so thankful and loved it.
So for me, it goes both ways. Like, if and touch wood, it hasn't happened yet, but if any of our hosts come to me and say, Paula, last night this happened, or there's something I feel very responsible. So I always wish we could do so much more as a group. Like we've done a couple, but have more, the hosts, everyone together and sharing and doing more. So I guess I guess for me, it's seeing how Melissa, what she gets out of it is extremely rewarding for me, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it would be more about the guest experience, which it is, of course, but it comes down to the host experience.
Yeah, I think that's something for me that comes up a lot with what I do with my consulting with restaurants is as much as the guest is so important, and they truly are, because without the guests there is no business, but it really is about your team. And that's something that I think is completely changed in our hospitality space. Is it no longer is just about the guests. It's not the guests first. It has to be like your team is first, to making sure that she has the tools that she needs and she's comfortable, because if she has what she needs, then seemingly she can create that experience for those guests to enjoy. But if she's not happy or not fulfilled or stressed or whatever it may be, so I feel like as a leader of this business, or a leader of any business, you really need to take care of your team first, and from that, the ripple effect, the byproduct will be your end consumer or clients will be the ones that reap the benefits of that. A bit counterintuitive, because for so long we've heard the guest is always right, the guest is always right, but that's just such a slippery slope.
For sure. And I think too, for me, a big learning was, I'm a planner, and one of the biggest things I learned pretty quickly was to be flexible. And when Melissa and our other hosts have different ideas or want to do something differently or try something, or, it's hands off. You listen. Why wouldn't you?
And
but
you're good
sometimes
at that,
we get caught up in the, oh no, we've got to do check this, check this. So
Good for you for being flexible, because I think that again allows for Melissa and your other hosts to make it their own and it not feel so stuffy, or not have a corporate feel to it. Like you want it to feel like you're in her home. You don't want it to feel like, oh, this feels like all the other ones,
right?
Which I'm assuming isn't your intention.
Correct.
Do you know what I mean? There should be touch points. You're like, oh, this is definitely an In My Kitchen event because of this.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's just like, wow, this is super unique. I've done 2 of these, and this third one's completely different.
Yeah.
You talked about business cards. That's exciting. You talked about other things. So growth is either currently occurring or on the horizon. So what does growth look like? And if before you answer that, as you're discussing and informing me on more of what In My Kitchen is, I can't help but think, and we're blessed with listeners all across the world, I can't help but think there's people listening going like, oh, I wonder if I could do this. I mean, we have listeners in Kenya and Germany and Italy and London and Arizona. So is there a potential that this could ever be and will be a global thing? Is that something that is part of this trajectory, or?
That was the dream. That is the dream, to have In My Kitchen. So if you've experienced an In My Kitchen adventure here in Vancouver and you were flying to Vienna, you could know that you could go to an In My Kitchen experience in Vienna and know that the same level of expectations would be met. Those
boxes being ticked.
Yeah. And so that definitely is what I didn't anticipate was the hands-on working together with a host. So trying to see, how do we take that? I can't be in every city, but I think it's a pretty easy fix where, for example, say if Melissa was in Toronto and we had In My Kitchen host there, Melissa might take on a bigger role and might be a lead host and sort of be the person that
like
nurtures
a liaison.
And liaison. So that is definitely in the horizons. I've had to be really patient, and I've had my board of directors, really caution me, go slow, don't go fast. So definitely I've had a business in the past, so been able to learn from that. So, making sure that I approach this in a way that it's viable and it's something that when we do grow it, we grow it in a way that makes sense and is not going to cause too much stress on any one person. This was always supposed to be a venture that would bring a lot of joy and creativity and be something that would allow for growth in a natural way. So if somebody said to me, somebody in Calgary said they really would be interested in hosting events in Calgary. And I said, I've heard the food scene and people are really interested. And this person was quite passionate about it. She said, no, with what's happening here, a lot of people would be interested. So I need more than one to launch in a city. What we would do, if we have 2 or 3, that would be the ideal number. So slowly putting out feelers. And once we get that in another city, we'll start looking at launching there. We also, all the things that you think about that come afterwards, but we're trademarking different elements of the brand and figuring out how that works nationally. We've been approached to be in Taiwan. Oh wow! Place through another through a web-based company, and so we've been approached to do from a company in Australia that wants us to provide in my kitchen experiences to a luxury cruise line. And I'm always about managing expectations. And she was here visiting or working in the summer. We met, and I said, we're not a luxury experience, but it's a real privilege for people to be in these homes.
For sure.
And there definitely is a value on that. And they were great. And I said, we're also not set up where we can just take a mass booking. That's not us. It's the hosts come first.
Exactly.
And then if that works. Anyway, what was really interesting, they have something similar in Australia, and we were on the same page. So there's some opportunities that are sort of, the things are happening. One of my dreams is I decided to do this while I was launching in my kitchen. I'm not sure why, but I just completed becoming a registered holistic nutritionist as well.
Congratulations.
Because I've always felt that sometimes we can put too much emphasis on, well, this is good for you, you should have that, this is good. When you start cooking from different cultures, most of them, except for maybe the North American diet, it's pretty healthy.
Yeah, very healthy,
with the spice. So it was just being able to help grow that. So I'd like to also get into bringing my kitchen into the schools. So, can you imagine Melissa coming into a bunch of grade 7, grade 8s, grade 12s and talking about making pasta while she's telling the stories of how she grew up in Italy, and that might inspire someone to go to Umbria. And, I would really love to share what I get so much when I get to talk to any of our hosts I think I bug you guys a bit too much. I'll text and say, how about this? But I just feel like it's such a privilege that when I get to share and talk and get all this awesome information, or I'm in the Japanese supermarket and I can text Naomi, what should I get for this? Or she shows me how to make, her mother used to make just homemade miso. It's so simple. And now I make it a pot, once a week. It's so simple if you have the ingredients, but so good for you and so tasty. So I just want to keep sharing that as much as I can. And
I love it.
Yeah, but I have to make it, because I want to keep doing this for a long time.
Yeah. So
I have to make sure that we keep it viable and slow and, keep going. So if, I tell you, technology is the thing that is my biggest obstacle as well.
Yeah.
Brad and I were chatting about podcasts, and that's sort of the next dream, and cookbooks and things like this. But even just the technology around the website, and I know the concepts, I know how far we can go, but I'm always looking for someone to. I always feel like bring people around you who are smarter than you.
Oh, always, yeah.
So I'm trying to build that circle. So if anyone,
if anyone feels they're smarter than Paula, please reach out.
I'm sure there's a lot.
I think it's so smart. Myself with my business, I never want to be the smartest guy in the room. I always want to feel like I can learn something from everyone. I think that's, and even if you are the smartest person in the room, I think it's very healthy to feel like you're always wearing a white belt, like like you're just learning, and be open to like, oh cool, like what can you share with me and what can you learn? I think it's such a healthy mindset to have, especially leaders of businesses. It's very beneficial for you to stay in that frame of mind. A quick question for you, Melissa. Why do you do this? You said you had a full-time job. If you're open to sharing. So like, what do you do outside of?
Well, outside of this, I work at SFU.
Okay.
So
shout out SFU.
Shout out SFU, great place to work.
Yeah.
There you go. And it's actually great because it allows me the opportunity to do this as well. but like everything, you need, I don't know. I come from like that immigrant background, right? Like you got to have a job. It's got to have a pension.
Oh, okay.
Like 100%, you got to own property. Like, so like just, I had, after university, I'd moved to Italy for a few years, and that sort of basically through university and living in Italy, that's where like I was always cooking, but then it like was kicked up to another level. Right. And love the hosting. And then I was thinking, how can I do this? Like I would ideally love to do this all the time.
Okay.
But you know, you need
a pension.
You need a pension. You need a house.
Do you still believe that?
I wish I didn't. Like, I wish I didn't, but I am.
It's just so ingrained in you.
It's so ingrained, man. Like, my parents, like, they and my nonna and nonno, like, if you don't have
this and this,
and it's like basic, like, it's not anything. So I have like a lot of, I wouldn't say fear, but basically coming back, I was like, how, and I thought for a number of years, how can I do this? Do I do supper clubs? Do I do
like pop-ups?
Right?
Yeah.
But then, you know, I'm also, I don't know, I have to build that sort of business mindset. So what like drew me to Paula is she's got the framework.
Right. She's built the frame of the house for you. You just gotta put the furniture in it.
I just have to be excited and cook and be engaging with people, and grow. Like I'm learning a lot.
I always said to Melissa, we'll be successful when we can hire all our hosts full time.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm like, okay, great. Like, hey, what's your RSP contribution?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Paula, like, got to talk to mom and dad Fiorucci.
So I'm so intrigued by that, and I respect your background, and I respect your parents and your grandparents and what they've instilled in you. I just feel like it is such a story that we hear. We've been told for so long, and there are a lot of people now that are saying, you know what, like, no, like I'm not gonna, because I only have 80 years or 90 years or maybe less, so I don't want to spend 45 hours of my week doing something. Not saying this is for you, but doing something I don't like when it's literally like burning inside of me. I want to cook for people, and I want to share what I'm passionate about with people, whatever it is. You want to cook for them, or you want to be a DJ or an artist, whatever it is. And I feel like, to Paula's point about getting into the podcast, and we said this again before we came on to the air, is like if there was ever a time in the history of like humankind, it is now. Like if you want to create something, it's now.
Yes.
And I think what's respectable of what you're doing is like you're dipping your toe in that water right now, and you're seeing like, okay, like maybe this could be something. Can we like stoke this fire? Can I help Paula grow this even more?
Absolutely.
And I think that's so cool. That what a gift, if I can say, like that Paula came into your life and 100%. She kind of said like, hey, we can do this. And if you're out there and you're listening, find yourself a Paula, or if there's no Paula, be the Paula.
Yes.
Not to pump your tires too much, Paula, but you know what I mean? Like some of us need that. And I talk about this so much on this podcast, so I apologize to listeners that I'm talking about it again, but Elizabeth Gilbert, fantastic author. I'm a big fan of hers. She wrote Big Magic. Have you read Big Magic? So she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, which everyone knows, the movie and all that stuff. But Big Magic, again, I apologize, listeners. You hear this almost every episode. But she talks about inspiration. And inspiration is a living, breathing thing. And inspiration comes to us and it chooses us. So you get inspired by something. You're sitting at your desk or you're in the kitchen. You get inspired by something. You have a choice in that moment whether or not you accept it and take it and nurture it and give it life. Or you can just let it kind of fade away, and then it will go and find someone else. And that's where, for me with this podcast and for me with my business, I had that feather kind of tickling me and going like, hey, like you should do this. You should really do this. And I just thought, you know what? Shame on me if I don't. So I'm going to go all in. And I find it so cool to see people now using food, people that have been making salsa in their basement for a few years. They're like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to make salsa and I'm going to sell salsa. That's what I'm going to do. And they're going all in, and they've quit their job that has a pension. And
that's giving me anxiety right now. Oh.
But that also is something I think is really healthy, is like feel that anxiety, feel that sandpaper a bit, because that's what we need. And I've got no issue with people staying in jobs and doing that and then affording a lifestyle for them and their family. I think that's totally cool. But I feel like if it's in you at all to step out, to jump into that like dark abyss of like, I don't know what this is going to be, like this is the time to do it, because it's just so easy. Like how easy is it? I mean, we live in Canada. Like how easy is it to set up a business, start a podcast, get a website, print business cards? Like we're so privileged. And I think it's so cool to see what you guys are doing. And maybe we look back, maybe we get together again a year from now and you are flying all over the world.
That sounds really great, Paula.
You could be the lead in my kitchen liaison.
Okay, sign me up.
Like why is that not a possibility?
Well, and now I'm inspired. We need in my kitchen experience in Italy.
Yes.
You must have family.
I will go. I know.
Oh my God, my Zia Maria.
Why have we not had this conversation already?
Yeah.
I would be squeezing so much juice out of this person.
Could
or
you
olive
imagine?
oil. Olive oil.
That's right. Olive oil.
But going,
a little bit of lard.
Meeting Melissa in her kitchen, and then when you go to Italy, being with her Zia and doing some,
looking at what someone here locally, Jackie Ellis, did with Boku Bakery. I don't know if you guys know Jackie. So she was in marketing. She said, screw that. Wanted to open up a bakery. Traveled to Paris. Just immersed herself in the Parisian lifestyle and Parisian baking. Brought that back to Vancouver. Has now sold her bakery. But then through that, she thought, you know what? I had so much fun in Paris. I want to share that with other people. I'm going to start Paris tours.
Yes.
So she just started saying, hey guys, you want to come with me? This is what it costs. I will take you around to all of the spots to go to in Paris. And just like, that can be done. And now she's written a book, and now she's like, it's endless, but you have to be willing to step into it and exercise that imposter syndrome. I mean, we all have it. I still have it myself. I'm sure, Paula, you do it sometimes as well. Like, when is the boss going to show up and take the keys from me, kind of thing?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, why not have an Italian experience? Like literally,
I've got so many ideas.
They were like,
oh yeah, there's
let's
like
get a
tons.
let's get a whiteboard. Let's cancel all of our plans today.
We go there and we have so much fun. My sister and I and the kids and like her kids. And it's just like, there's so many experiences that aren't like the typical things.
Yeah,
right?
they're super unique, and that's what a lot of people don't like. When I travel, I don't want typical. I don't. Sorry. I want typical for that place.
Exactly.
I don't want tourist. I don't want for Brad, the white guy from Canada. I want for the Italian Brad that's been living there for 30 years and knows about this spot that they don't speak English, and there's no pictures of the food, and it's just like you actually don't even order. They just bring you food. It's just like, oh, I don't eat octopus. Well, guess what? Today you eat octopus.
Yes.
You know what I'd like to start, and I want you to be my first guest.
Okay.
Is I'd like to start a luncheon series, or maybe lunch isn't such a good idea because you have that job with pension.
Yeah, I know.
Right now she does.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Or maybe on a flex day, but where we change. But there's 6 or 8 people gather in the kitchen. We have lunch and we share ideas, because I
find like a mastermind, like a luncheon mastermind.
Yeah.
But around really good food.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I find I have all these ideas and I'm in my computer. I'm trying to get everything done, but every time I have these conversations, you go from here to here. Yes. Yeah. But I think that would be great, and you get different people around the table. Yeah,
I think it's such a healthy thing to do, and that's something that I'm trying to do more and more myself. Is I'm I'm an extrovert. I'm a glass half full, rose-colored glasses, and I feel that a lot of times I can get caught in kind of my circle, and it's almost becoming like an echo chamber. I want to be challenged more. I want to find people that look at the world differently and think differently than I do. And I think that's also very healthy as well. And I'm assuming you get with the events that you host is you're having people come into your home that like, I probably wouldn't share pasta with you, but whoa, it's so cool that now we're sharing pasta and I'm learning from you because you see things differently than I see. I think that's such a healthy thing that food can do for us. It can be that connector again, where we're exposing ourselves to people that we probably wouldn't sit down and have an hour-long conversation with. And that's also what's really cool, I feel, about this podcast as well. And what it's done for me is, for some reason, you put some microphones in front of some people and seemingly it should be the opposite. Usually people would feel like they're guarded with it. But I promise you, we've discussed stuff today over the last 59 minutes and 12 seconds that we likely wouldn't have discussed if we met at a Starbucks for coffee.
No,
Right.
we wouldn't have talked to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
No, it'd be surface.
Yeah.
It'd be surface stuff.
Yes,
You're
Right.
like, yes,
absolutely.
you know what? Let's just stay in that job because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
yes, okay. You know what I mean? Whereas for some reason, and I think the fact that we're in your kitchen as well, there's this energy that's allowing us to share and be more vulnerable and be more open. So I'm super intrigued to see where this goes and steamrolls into. And I think we definitely should do round 2 at some point.
Yeah.
This is called the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. So before we end this, I have 2 questions for you both. I ask every guest. There's 2 of you, so you can share the load of this.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So it's called the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. So I have for you both the half a dozen have-tos. Stay with me here.
Okay.
I need from each of you 3. That'll be a total of 6 or a half a dozen. Things that you've experienced in your life that you feel like our listeners have to experience, food related or not. It can be a trip you've taken, a book you've read, a piece of art you've looked at, a concert you've been to, a movie you've seen. So from each of you, 3 of your have-tos. We can go back and forth.
I think everybody's got to go spend some time on a dairy farm.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That's a good
yeah.
one.
I grew up on a dairy farm from being a city kid and then back to being a city kid. And I wish I could give my kids that experience.
Cool.
So that's the one.
I like that. I know some farms in Abbotsford. I can make that happen for you. We can do a couple day
that
trips.
sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, me, I think definitely everybody needs to go. They're not even agriturismos. It's basically like a country house in the middle of nowhere, particularly in Umbria. You go there on like a feast day, like a saint day, and you got to go down there and you got to find it first. So talk to me. And you've got to sit there and eat whatever they give you.
Yeah.
And then go listen to the old guys playing accordions afterwards. Like, that's my happy place.
I love it.
Oh,
I
that
feel
sounds
I
good.
feel like I'm there already.
Yes.
All right. If you're not already doing it, do a Sunday dinner and don't worry so much about what you put on the table. Just invite family or friends and have them come over. But the key is not to stress about what you're putting on the table. Just get the people there, even have them bring stuff, but just start creating like a weekly family friend dinner.
I love it. Tradition.
Yeah.
So important.
Traditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is great. Okay, here's a good one. If you can, go float in the Dead Sea.
Yes.
Wow.
Really cool. And I don't know, it makes you really happy. Apparently the lower sea level or I don't know, whatever it is.
Stuff.
Science stuff. It makes you really happy. I love
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Very cool.
Cool.
Paul, last one.
Last one. Okay. Now I'm feeling pressure. I'm overthinking it.
I think you probably have 1,000 in your head. Just whatever's on the tip of your tongue. You can't be wrong with this
Okay.
one.
I think for me, one of my happiest places to be is just myself, my 2 boys. We're camping, has to be on water, and we're cooking together and just out in the great outdoors with food, activity, loved ones.
Perfect. I like that. That's a really good one. Melissa, back to you.
Okay, last one I have to say, talk to, we were talking about this earlier, talk to the old people in your life, elderly, not old. Talk to your nonna, even if you fight with her, I fought with mine all the time. Talk to your nonna, talk to your zias, your aunts, whoever, your uncles. Just hear how they cooked. Don't necessarily get down recipes, but just, chat to them.
Ask questions.
Ask questions, keep those old stories, keep them alive.
I love
Absolutely.
it. Stoke that fire.
Yeah.
The last one I have for you 2 ladies is the half a dozen haven't yet. So more of like a bucket list, if you will. So from each of you, 3 of things you've yet to experience in your life that you're hoping to.
I hate bucket lists. They're so hard. Like, I want to do everything.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of stopped bucket lists.
That's okay. Yeah, that's fine.
You know what? I started thinking everything, whenever I get the chance, say yes to it if I can and create as many experiences and memories. I always said I wanted to live my life in a way that I could tell my grandchildren great stories.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I like that.
That's really good.
That's like 3 bucket list items in one.
Yeah. Oh,
So now you got to do all 3, Melissa.
Yeah, I know. I was like, okay, I hate because I'm one of those people that if you tell me to do something, like I won't do it. Like I'll be like, Melissa, you need to do this. No, I don't. It's a real problem. Gosh. Something I've done that I haven't done already.
You can have 0. Some people have 0.
Yeah, I can have 0. Well, you know what I really want to do? I want to do that marathon in Bordeaux in like wine country.
I'll do that with you.
Yeah, I
That sounds
100.
great.
You know what? I don't run.
But you drink wine.
And they do like in fancy dress. That sounds like you have to like dress in costumes. Like
when are you gonna do that by?
Oh, I don't like goals either.
Well, we're here to hold you accountable.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I got lots of trips planned. I want to do that in 45. When I'm 45.
So we won't say how many years that is.
Oh, that's okay. It's like
8
whatever.
Years. 8 years from now.
Yeah, whatever. However many years.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I'm 45, sure.
Okay. Amazing.
That sounds good.
Great.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you both so much for holding space for myself and making time for me and the listeners. I truly appreciate it. And I'm super excited. I personally am going to be attending an In My Kitchen event on November 21st. This will go out in 3 weeks, which will be the beginning-ish of November. If listeners are interested, can we assume there's still space for the 21st at this time? If not, how best do people get in and experience In My Kitchen?
The best way is to visit our website, inmykitchen.ca, or on Instagram at inmykitchenvancouver.
Amazing.
And we usually have multiple culinary adventures happening over the same weekends. So there'll probably be an opportunity on the 21st for one of them.
Amazing. Any parting words for our listeners in regards to either personal thoughts or thoughts about In My Kitchen? Anything you want to share with listeners before we sign off?
I'm just so humbled that you wanted to do this with us.
No, I think it's so cool.
Right?
I think
This was a really great conversation. I was a little bit apprehensive, but this was wonderful.
We're just chatting. We're just chatting in her kitchen.
Yes.
Yeah. Amazing.
What's for lunch?
Actually, you brought your homemade.
Yeah, I think I'm cooking. No.
Yeah.
Listeners can't see this, but Melissa brought a homemade jar of passata that they made this summer.
Which is?
It's like basically the base for your sauce. So it's like strained tomatoes.
Oh,
and we make
okay.
it every August. Like typical Italians, garage
Everyone
is
like
full of
sits
tomatoes.
on the seats and they're seating it.
Yeah, exactly. We
Amazing.
do that every August.
So cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
Again, thank you guys so much for making time for me and the listeners. Thank you guys for tuning in as you do week after week. I truly appreciate and love you all. If it wasn't for you, this show would not exist. That is Melissa. This is Brad. That is Paula. This is the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Have an amazing remainder of your day. Thank you guys so much. And you know what to do until next time. Be good and do good. That's it. We did it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
That was great. Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah.